So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was born as Kedaranath Datta on 1838, September 2nd. And that he was born in a village, Ula. Ula is close to Krishnanagar. Krishnanagar is the closest city to Mayapur. That's by car 20 minutes. We are in Krishnanagar. It was in a village there, Ula. It's about 100 kilometers north of Calcutta. He was born in 38, but then in 52, just 14 years later, he was forced to move to Calcutta. What happened is that there was a plague in the area of Ula, and his entire family died, everyone. He was the only survivor. And but then he had to go to Calcutta, where he had a maternal uncle and he stayed with him there till 1858, till he was 20 years old. At that time, he was in search for education and employment, and he entered the social circles of what they called the Bhadralok. Bhadralok, it was the policy of the British Raj, who was ruling over India. And their policy was to give local Indians a British education, turn them into Christians and all education, and then to employ them. And he became, they are called the Bhadralok. He entered that world of the Bhadralok, of the colonial Bengal in that time, and he studied at a Hindu charitable institution, and he became friends with famous personalities from India, Satyendranath and Gajendranath Tagore, Keshab Chandra Sen. Keshab Chandra Sen would later become the future leader of the Brahmo Samaj. Brahmo Samaj, they wanted to reform Hinduism because the British were there and they were criticizing Hinduism. They said this satirite, burning of widows forced. They said that's all coming from your culture. And also all this caste system, they were criticizing that. So they wanted to reform Hinduism and make it without castes, and and all these things, westernize it a bit, according to the criticism. So that's the Brahmo Samaj. And Keshab Chandra Sen was one of the leaders there later. But he was a classmate of this Tagore also from Bhaktivinoda. Kedaranath was Bhaktivinoda's name. So he came also in contact with the Brahmo Samaj, this Bhadralok, who wanted to redefine Hinduism. And Kedaranath, Bhaktivinoda Thakur at that time, started occasional occasionally he was writing in English articles for the Hindu Intelligencer, was a magazine called. And he was giving lectures on religion in the British Indian Society, and he was following the education in Scottish College by a Reverend Charles Dow, which was a Scottish missionary that Prabhupada also had received that education at the Scottish College, same institution, many years later. That I've been there. I've seen the building of the Scottish College in 25 years ago. The Prabhupada went to school, and that I went there with my Guru Maharaj Bhaktisiddhanta brought me there. And that, and he was doing, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was also studying all the Christian theologians. He developed appreciation for Jesus Christ and Christian beliefs. That and that made him reflect on the role of theism. But then he went to rigid exams, for state exams, and he became a deputy magistrate. These are the higher ranks of the so-called colonial service, and he got that in 1866. That 28 years old at that time. And that, he passed to these rigorous examinations, but the British Raj had the point of moving this deputy magistrates every few years from one place to another, to make sure they would not become corrupt. So he was moved every few years. He was moved 25 times during his career. 25 times. And he did different civil service responsibilities. But in 1868, 2 years later, he was transferred to Dinajpur. And in Dinajpur, all the residents were followers of Lord Chaitanya. They were Vaishnavas. And it was at that time that he started to study the Chaitanya theology. That from 1869 till 1874, he served as deputy magistrate for Jagannath Puri. And he became in charge of the Jagannath Puri temple. And at that time, he made an in-depth study of the Vaishnava literature with the help of local pundits, Brahmins, expert in Sanskrit and Vaishnava scriptures. And he was overseeing all the affairs of the Jagannath temple. He regulated the deity worship practice to an extreme precision. That at that time, he was still Kedarnath, but his son was born, Bimal Prasad. That will become later Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. But it's suddenly by studying this Bhakti literature, the focus of his life became to write books on Bhakti in Bengali, in English, and in Sanskrit. And he took initiation from Bipin Bihari Goswami. This is a follower of Nityananda Prabhu. We see in our Guru Parampara, yes, before you have Jaranadas Babaji. How is Jaranadas Babaji related with Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur was following the lectures of Jaranadas Babaji. Jaranadas Babaji became his Shiksha Guru. So our line is not connected only to Diksha, also to Shiksha. Shiksha is also a bona fide connection. We should not forget that. But one must also take Diksha, but he took Diksha from Bipin Bihari Goswami. So he wrote commentaries on the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he revived the Chaitanya Charitamrita, because it was practically lost, and he reprinted it. That in 1886, Kedarnath received the title of Bhaktivinoda because of his learning. So he was also very strong against caste Brahmins. One does not become a Brahmin by birth or by quality. Una in karma, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. And also Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada later used this argumentation of Bhaktivinoda Thakur to justify initiating Western disciples as Brahmins. Because before that was unheard of in Hinduism. Someone outside India to initiate as a Brahmin, not possible. So he brought the preaching spirit, revived the preaching spirit. And his principles he established were further developed by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and ISKCON. Thus, he made the strategies. He was the first who started printing books and distributing books. Not only in Bengal, but also in English. Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur, because he knew the Christian faith, he could present Chaitanya's Vaishnavism in a language understandable by the Westerners, by the Christian people. He also showed how traditional religious faith can be expressed in terms of the 19th century Bengali culture. So one of the things he did, he published was a 64-page book, Chit Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, His Life and Precepts. And he was sending it by post, by carrier, to universities all over the world. In Australia, at the university, they found a copy, later on. The devotees found a copy, and they found also a copy in the McGill University in Montreal. I gave also lectures there, it's nice. And at the University of Sydney. Also at the Royal Society, Asian Society in London. So he was concerned with that international preaching, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And he founded the Vishva Vaishnava Raja Sabha. It's a World Vaishnava Association, which represents the 4 bona fide paramparas. You remember them? the four Sri Sampradaya, Brahma Gaudiya Vatsapasha Sampradaya, Kumaras, and Rudra Sampradaya. These are the four. And it exists still. With Gaur Purnima in Mayapur, that in the morning, on the day of Gaur Purnima, they come all together before the gate in Mayapur, and they do Harinam Tasama together. Nice.
This for
Yeah, the four Sampradaya. That because also Bhaktivinoda Thakur was printing books, but also for these Sampradayas. He helped them also. Interesting. That he did many other things. He started a research center. He installed a printing press. So many points. He wanted to build bridges between the Vaishnava and the Judeo-Christian traditions. He did not hesitate to use Christian expressions, such as universal fraternity, cultivation of the spirit. And he often said, Christianity is a Vaishnava type religion. Type religion. Because there is one God. So, in this way, he was seeking to adapt Chaitanya Vaishnava culture to the modern world. So he wanted also, he established also ways to introduce Krishna consciousness in an easy, practical way. So he organized programs at different places and created Namhatas centers. And in these Namhatas, they would have regular programs with three things. Kirtan first, lecture, prasadam. We are still doing that today. This is our program. He introduced that. And we are following Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Namahata system. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave regular lectures. So he followed first lectures of Charinodas Babaji, but then later he gave lectures, and Gaurakishora Das Babaji would come hearing the lectures of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Gaurakishora Das Babaji was just the opposite of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a householder. And Gaurakishora Das Babaji, he was an ascetic, renunciant. And he will be the future guru of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. So this is his Namahata system. Yeah, in relation to his son Bimal Prasad. He called his son Bimal Prasad because when he was born in Jagannath Puri. Before, when you have the Jagannath temple, then before the Jagannath temple, when the Rath cart is going to the other temple, the Gundicha temple, it's a road of about 3 kilometers. As I remember, I was there. But I was there also in the middle, more or less in the middle. There you have the house of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which you can still visit. Yes. The wife of Bhaktivinoda was Bhagavati. I think he had 10 or 11 children. Bhaktivinoda Thakur. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his practice, And I think that's also mentioned in your book, and that's interesting. What was his sadhana? That his sadhana is mentioned, I think, on page 79. It is from 8 o'clock in the evening till 10, he would take rest, 2 hours. At 10 o'clock till 4 o'clock in the morning, he would write at night. He would write. From 4 to 4:30, he would take rest. From 4:30 till 7, he would chant japa. 7 to 7:30, correspondence. 7:30 till 9:30, study of the Shastras. 9:30, take a bath, half-liter milk, fruit, and 2 chapatis. That was his breakfast. Half-liter milk, fruit, and 2 chapatis. And then on 10 o'clock, he would go to the court and do his duties. He would work till 1 o'clock. Then 1 o'clock till 2, he would refresh at home. And from 2 till 5, he will do it court duties again. And from 5 to 7, he would again translate Sanskrit Shastras. And from 7 to 8, he would take a bath, some prasadam, half-liter milk, rice. And then he would take rice and 2 chapatis. So he was sleeping 3 hours, writing 8.5 hours, chanting and studying 4.5 hours, and working only 6 hours. His colleagues were envious of him that he would do the double work than they would do in half of the time. Anyway, that's very exceptional. So this is.
How do you feel this goal? 2 hours rest.
You cannot imitate that. He was on the Transcendental platform. Prabhupada did that also. The 6 Goswamis were also sleeping 2 hours, not more. That maximum.
It's not that you can come to that level of something.
You must first realize that you are not the body. You have realized that you are on the Transcendental platform, but you cannot imitate that. We need 6 hours of sleep, for sure. And it is good to take balanced rest, because then your chanting will be better. If you are tired, it doesn't work.
Isn't it somewhere stated, even in Bhagavad Gita or somewhere, that the pure devotee, even when he sleeps, he doesn't sleep actually? Still like focus on Krishna.
Yes, one who is on the Transcendental platform with this Mahabharata. That's very rare. Very rare. So now we come to Bimal Prasad, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. Because his guru was Gaurakishora Das Babaji. Gaurakishora Das Babaji, he lived for a long time in Vrindavan. But then by the end of his life, when he became 145 years old. That's old. But when he was over 100, he could not walk anymore. And a servant, he was traveling from Vrindavan back to Mayapur. And a servant was carrying him in a basket on his head. Like that, they were traveling. They came back to, No, that was Jagannath Das Babaji. That was Jagannath Das Babaji, sorry. That was he gave Shiksha to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Because there's so much to say, and I may forget things, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gaurakishora is another story. This is Jagannath. I was wrong. Jagannath Babaji was traveling in a basket. And he was at Navadvip when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was there. Because at a certain moment, Bhaktivinoda Thakur resigned from government service at the end. And they didn't want to let him go. But the governor said, yeah, we will give you an indefinite leave of absence. And he got out of it. And then he was pushing the mission of Lord Chaitanya and printing books and building a temple and so on in Mayapur. So many things. He had a house in Mayapur. But nobody knew where the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya was. But then he studied the area and he found a very old map. And in the scripture it said the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya was in Mayapur. And there they found they found on the map, this old map, a village, and that was called Mayapur. Nearly the same. I was thinking that must be the Mayapur. But at that time, Muslims were living there. So he was coming there, and he went to the place where he thought Lord Chaitanya must have taken birth. And he got confirmed because of this place were growing so many tulsi plants spontaneously. He was thinking this must be the place because that he felt the vibration, he first saw the tulsi plants, he saw the indication of this old map, but he wanted it to get confirmed by a self-realized person. And Jagannath Babaji was there. And they brought Bhaktivinoda Thakur, went with him, and they brought Bhaktivinoda Thakur in a basket to that place. He was 140 years at that time. That Vaishnavas can become very old. And when he saw this place and these tulsi plants, suddenly Jagannath Babaji, he jumped out of the basket and started to dance like a young man in complete ecstasy. And he was chanting and said, yes, this is the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. And on that place, they built later the Yoga Pit. Yoga Pit is the place, birthday of Lord Chaitanya. And there's a neem tree. Under this neem tree, Lord Chaitanya has taken birth. But when you have Mayapur, Navadvip is at the other side of the Jalangi River. I went to the other side of the Jalangi River, and there you have Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house. Because he got another indication. When he was in that house at Jalangi River, and that is in his writings, 100 years, more than 100 years ago. He was in his house, and one evening he looked at Mayapur, at the other side of the Chalangami, where Mayapur is. And he looked, and suddenly he saw the big temple and thousands of Vaishnavas dancing and chanting together from all races. He saw that in its vision, that it was so effulgent. And that was another confirmation. This is the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. And in the future, a big temple will arrive there, a Buddha Mandir, which will host Vaishnavas all over the world. And this Buddha Mandir is now coming up. That's the prediction of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Is there that this Mayapur temple? Yeah, I've seen this, how this Mayapur temple was built. I've been there when the groundbreaking was done. It's a huge, huge temple. And he had that vision that all Vaishnavas of all the world would come there. So that's Jagannath Das Babaji. But then Gaurakishora Das Babaji, he was an ascetic. And he was before a grain merchant. But he became a Vaishnava. He attended the class of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And he was completely renounced. He was living in a village, in the forest, just in the forest. And he would make beads from cloth he would find, and he would wear, and they bring dead corpses to the Ganga to let them flow into the Ganga, and he would use the clothes of that person and would wash it, and that he would wear was completely renounced, and people were coming to him to give blessings, but he didn't want to see them. Therefore, he was chanting in a latrine, where the toilet, because people don't like to come there, so he was chanting there. And once a quite rich person came and said to Gaurakishora Das Babaji, Maharaj, why are you chanting here in the forest? I can give you a nice room and all what you want. And Gaurakishora Das Babaji said, oh, Maya is trying to entice me. It's trying to entice me. It's trying to lure me and Gaurakishora Das Babaji, then I become your tenant. Anyway, another time, another wealthy person came and said, yes, Maharaja, I will build a hut for you, then at least you can get out of the sun and chant there. And Gaurakishora Das Babaji, I don't need your hut. And when give me your blessings, I will do whatever you want. Oh, Gaurakishora Das Babaji said, he was humorous. You do everything what I say? Just stay here and chant. And the man said, I cannot give up everything. And he left. So Gaurakishora Das Babaji was really renounced. He was chanting constantly, without interruption. But then, when Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in 1883, he became a deputy magistrate in Serampore, that's north of Calcutta. And he sent Bhaktisiddhanta, at that time Bimal Prasad, to a Bengali medium school. And he received also this Bhadralok youth education, Bhaktisiddhanta. And he developed an interest. Bhaktisiddhanta was interested in mathematics, and he studied astronomy. And he wrote a book which got an award, Siddhanta Sarasvati. No, sorry. He wrote a book, and after writing this book, he got the title Siddhanta Sarasvati. That book that he wrote on astronomy has been translated. It's available in English. I've seen it. But he passed also demanding exams at the Sanskrit college. He became advanced in Sanskrit, mathematics, Indian philosophy, ancient history. But what he was really doing while he was studying, he was reading the books of his father, all the Vaishnava books. And that was his real interest. That was his real interest. His father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, was engaging Bimala Prasad in astronomy, in publishing two he was engaging Bimal Prasad in proofreading all his books. By that he became very acquainted with the English and the books. He started the school for astronomy for a few years, and then he was offered Bhaktisiddhanta a high position at the court of the Maharaj of Tripura. But Tripura, he was a regional king, and he was supporting Bhaktivinoda Thakur to print his books. He was one of his sponsors. And so Bhaktisiddhanta was in charge of educating his son, that the princely sons of Maharaj Radhadesh, it is a task which he did for a few years. But then after that, he became dedicated to the chanting, austerity, celibacy. Became very serious in that. At that time, he came in contact with Gaurakishora Das Babaji, because Gaurakishora Das Babaji sometimes visited the home of Bhaktivinoda Thakur to attend the classes of Bhaktivinoda Thakur on the Bhagavatam and so on. But Gaurakishora Das Babaji, his guru was Bhagavad Das Babaji. And Bhagavad Das Babaji was a disciple of Jagannath Das Babaji. That's interesting. It's also the connection that he became spiritually deeply absorbed, and he was Gaurakishora Das Babaji was spiritually deeply absorbed, and he was very renounced, austere, that he was absorbed always in the chant of Krishna's holy names. So Bimal Prasad, later Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, he recognized Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Gaurakishora Das Babaji as straight, fully realized Vaishnavas. But when Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he asked Bhaktivinoda Thakur, from whom should I take initiation? And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, you should take initiation of Gaurakishora Das Babaji. So Bimal Prasad went to Gaurakishora Das Babaji to beg for, please give me initiation. But Gaurakishora Das Babaji said, giving you initiation, but you are the great scholar in astronomy and so on, so much education. I'm illiterate. coming from. I was a grain merchant. How can I give you initiation? But anyway, a few times later, then Vimal Prasad went back to beg, please give me initiation. That, well, Gaurakishora, I will ask Krishna, come back later. So a few weeks later, Vimal Prasad go back to Gaurakishora Babaji and ask him, did you ask Krishna? Gaurakishora Babaji said, oh, I forgot. Anyway, but then finally, Bhaktisiddhanta Vimal Prasad went back and said, if you don't give me initiation, I end my life, I will jump from the bridge. And then finally he agreed him to give him initiation. The only one who he gave initiation. But then a few years later, Bhaktivinoda passed away, and within 1 or 2 years later, also Gaurakishora Babaji passed away. Yeah, and they passed away when Gaurakishora Babaji passed away. Out of humility, Gaurakishora Babaji said, after my passing away, put some ropes around my legs and drag my body through the streets of Navadvip so that I become purified my body becomes purified by the holy Dham. Of course, when that happened, when he passed away, local people and local pundits wanted to take the body and execute that order and then burn it. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, who had been initiated by Gaurakishora Babaji, he said, yes, I'm a lifelong celibate. I never touched a woman. That I've the right to take that body. If someone didn't touch a woman for 6 weeks, for 2 months, for 6 months, for 2 months, for 1 week, one can take it. But they all disappeared. And he put it in samadhi in the ground, because spiritual master's body is considered holy. But, So, then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj started to print books that revived the printing, continued the printing, and he started to also to preach, and he started a center in Calcutta, and he traveled to India, and he opened 64 centers all over India, and he created the Gaudiya Math. That was his institution. And he also had one center started in Burma. And he sent a disciple, Bon Maharaj, to London to make disciples. And there in London, he came in contact with the high society there. He he came. He was invited by Lord Zetland. Lord Zetland, he had been the governor for Bengal in India for two years, and he knew the devotees, how they were chanting and so on. And he was nicely received, but he could not make devotees, because he had been traveling together with an assistant, a brahmachari, to the Asian Sea, and then Italy, to the Red Sea, I mean, and then the Suez Channel, then to Italy, and from Italy, France, to England. And then he went to Germany. Germany was ruled by, at that time, was Nazi Germany, was fascistic. And there he met in Berlin, in Germany, Ernest Schulze. Ernest Schulze was a student, was interested in Indian religion, and he helped Bon Maharaj to write a book on Vaishnavism in German. He translated it in German. Die Gedenknis or die Geheimnis der Hinduism. And Bon Maharaj gave lectures, but then the Nazis found out that what he was telling was not in agreement with their racial theory, and and by that the origin of the Aryans and so on. And he was prosecuted, and he had to flee Germany. And Ernest Schulze went with him. And they went back to England. And from England, with the ship, they went back to India. And when they arrived in Calcutta, that's 1933, just by some months before, or maybe a year before the passing away of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And there, yes, when he was back, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj gave initiation to Ernest Schulze from Germany. He became the first German devotee. And a few years later, he remained in India in the Gaudiya Math. He got sannyas, first Western sannyasi. Interesting. That Ernest Schulze, I don't know, I forgot his sannyas name, but yes. So he was not the first devotee in Europe. But then, of course, when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was still living, at the end of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was invited to speak at an assembly of Brahmins, local Brahmins, caste Brahmins. And they wanted him to speak about who is eligible to serve the Saligam Shila. Saligam Shila can only be worshipped by Brahmins. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur was too sick, and he said to his son Bhaktisiddhanta, "You go." And he went and he spoke to them. And first he was glorifying the Brahmins. So the Brahmins is very dear to Lord Krishna and that. But then he started to explain in Kali Yuga, there are no qualified Brahmins. Everything is born as a Sudra. Yeah. Kala, Sudra, Sambhava, everyone is born Sudra. So there are no qualified Brahmins. But he said, and then based on the scriptures, he said, the Vaishnavas are higher than Brahman. Because Brahman is the level of Nishtha, it's the level of liberation. Realizing I'm not a body. Brahmabhuta Pashanatna Shustina Kankshati. One does not lament anymore, not hanker anymore, one is liberated. Then one has to go beyond that point of liberation. That one has to go beyond that. And a devotee goes beyond it. So it becomes higher than a Brahman. Brahman is, I'm realizing that I'm not this body. But then, who am I? I'm a spirit soul. And the spirit soul is meant to engage in spiritual activities. So then you must, and that's what a Vaishnava does. So a Vaishnava automatically develops the qualities of a Brahman. The qualities of a Brahman are described in Bhagavad Gita. Stamtmastapasya Kshantir Kshantir and so on. The Sama, Dhammas, control of the senses, the peaceful, and charity. So one is, these are Brahminical qualities, and a devotee develops these qualities, but above that, he develops the qualities of a devotee. I think you have 21 symptoms, qualities of pure devotees studied from Chaitanya Charitamrita. You have seen 24 qualities, 21, yeah. Anyway, the qualities of pure devotees. That. So he started to say to these Brahmins, the Vaishnava is higher. And most people were very happy with what he said. And they wanted to touch his feet and so on, and they praised him. But these caste Brahmins, they became very envious because they had a monopoly on religion and all the sacrifices, and they were living from that. And then he's saying, and then this man is coming saying, if you just become a Vaishnava, you are higher. And they tried, and that caused a lifelong enmity between both. And they tried to murder him many times. Even 20 years later, he went back with disciples, and he was attacked. And another devotee said to him, Maharaj, come with me. And they changed clothes. And the devotee took the clothes of Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj. And then they were running after this disciple to get him. But he was young and could run. And he climbed into a tree. And then later they were gone, he came down. And he saved the life of Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj. But Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj never compromised. And this hate of these caste Brahmins became more intense when he started to give Brahmin initiation to devotees who were not born in a Brahmin family. That was unheard of in Hinduism. That unheard. That anyway, until today, this is a point in India. Be careful if you are Brahmin initiated. That they are really envious about that. Therefore, when Srila Prabhupada did the installation of Krishna Balaram in Vrindavan, he could not do the installation by his disciples from America. He was inviting local Brajavasi Brahmins to do that. And then at the same time, the devotees were performing kirtan, because otherwise the local people would not accept the temple as bona fide. So that is one point. Of course, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, then Srila Prabhupada met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. There's much more to say about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, where time is limited. Like one thing, so one innovation that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj brought in is initiating, giving Brahman initiation to non-Brahmins, not from the Brahmin caste in India. That was new. But he also started, he took from the Sankaracharya line, they had sannyasis who were dressed in saffron. And he took from them the saffron and started to initiate sannyasis. Before, there were no sannyasis in that sense in our movement. We're all Babajis. But he started to initiate sannyasis and to engage them in preaching. And Prabhupada followed that also. Prabhupada gave initiation to non-Brahmins, Westerners. And he was initiating sannyasis. That's all introduced by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. And Srila Prabhupada was preaching against these caste Brahmins. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Sunyavadi. That Nirvishesha, he was preaching against impersonalists and Mayavadis. That and that comes also, that preaching against these Mayavadis, and this Mayavadi means, yes, that they think we can become one with God. That's the Advaita philosophy, oneness. We become one with God, with Brahman, and Brahman is God. But then, if you are Brahman and Brahman is God, how can it be that you are in a body and you are conditioned? If you are God, how do you become conditioned? No, it's nonsense. That Brahman is one aspect of the absolute truth. Then you have Paramatma and Bhagavan. Paramatma and Brahman are expansions from Krishna. Paramatma is his local expansion. And Brahman is his body effulgence, the spiritual light. And we are of the same quality. Advaita means we are one in quality. And that's true. Krishna is Satchitananda. He's eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. And we are, as a spirit soul, we are also Satchitananda. Eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. In that sense, we are one. In quality, but not in quantity. We are Krishna's energy. That Krishna is controlling and maintaining us. And that's Dvaita. We are also different. We are different in quantity, one in quality. And that's the philosophy of Ashintya Veda Veda Tattva. Lord Chaitanya. We are one and different. But then, of course, Srila Prabhupada was born on the 1st of September, 1969. And his father was Gaur Mohan Dev. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But Srila Prabhupada was born in 1896. And his father was Gaur Mohan Dev. He was a pure Vaishnava. That Srila Prabhupada writes that in Bhagavad Gita. In the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is asking Krishna, one who is born, one who takes birth again after a long practice, but doesn't get perfection, what happens with him, Arjuna? Okay. And Krishna says, such a person takes, if there is a short practice, he takes birth, he goes first to the heavenly planets, and then comes back, takes birth in a rich family so that he have not to work too much and can engage again and will become attracted to engaging in devotional service again. But one who has a long practice, he will take birth in a family of pure devotees. Pure devotees. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport writes there, yes, my Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, was in that case. He became the son of Bhaktivinoda, and I was also in that case. I took birth from a pure Vaishnava, Karmande. And he said, yes, we took both birth in pure in pure families of pure devotees, and later I met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati by the system of the Parampara, and we became connected. That's what he said in that purport. So Srila Prabhupada, he was educated as a Vaishnava, and when he was 5 years old, his father, Karmande, organized, built for him a small Rathayatra cart, and built according to the model in Jagannath Puri, and then they had in the street, they had Rathayatra, and all the mothers of the neighborhood prepared prasad sweets, and then all the children were having kirtan and distributing these sweets in the street. That was his first Rathayatra. So he was born with Rathayatra, Srila Prabhupada. And it said when he was 5 years old, he was sent to, they were just living across, practically, the Muliks temple. Muliks were quite rich people at that time, Vaishnavas, and they were worshipping, they had a temple, they were worshipping the deity of Radha Govinda. And it is said when Prabhupada was a toddler, they brought him to this temple, and he would for hours gaze, just look at Radha Govinda without moving. A child does not do that, but they became so absorbed in every time in the deity, so attracted. I've been there at this Mulik's temple by the mercy of my spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, and I saw these deities. And the temple, we took prasad there, we had a class there. Beautiful, beautiful. Yes. And ISKCON was supporting them, the temple there. But later, Srila Prabhupada, then, when he grew up, his father was a cloth merchant. He was sitting in his shop, and he was reading the Bhagavatam, and then serving clients. And in the evening, before he went home, he would put a pot of rice, cook a pot of rice, and put it on the ground. And then in the night, a mouse would come and eat that, and would not eat the cloth. That's interesting. But then he became a student at the Scottish Church College in Calcutta. And he later, because when he graduated, then because the English, they tried to minimize the Hindu faith and so on, that he didn't accept the college degree. He just didn't came by the graduation. He just renounced it because he became somewhat a follower of Gandhi. He wanted the British out. So he was wearing a cotton kurta, and and mostly they are wearing a Gandhi hat. Anyway, that was a whole culture. But then his friend, he had a friend that Narendranath Malik was his college friend, and he said, "Yes, I've a great sadhu who will come to speak. Please come and hear." But Abhay, that was Prabhupada's name, Abhay Charan Dey, that he said, "My father is receiving so many sadhus, and they are dressed in saffron, but they are smoking biddies, and they are not serious. I have no faith in these sadhus." But Narendranath said, "But this sadhu is very special." And Abhay Charan said, "No, I don't want." But his friend forced him to see Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. And they went up to this, and that place where they met, ISKCON has bought it 2 years ago and restored it to its original state. And Maharaj gave a lecture on the second floor. There's Bhaktisiddhanta, so Prabhupada Abhay Charan coming with his friend. And you know what he said? The first thing that he said to them, "You are educated boys. Why don't you take up the Lord Chaitanya's message and preaching in the Western world?" That's the first thing practically he said to them. But Abhay Charan, he said, "No, I cannot do that. What is the use of preaching? We must first get independence from the English. Who will be interested otherwise?" But Lord Chaitanya said, that's Bhaktisiddhanta said, "The mission of Lord Chaitanya does not depend on material circumstances. It's urgent. This is, one ruler will come, another ruler will come. They will come and go. But we have to spread Krishna consciousness." And so then, since then, Srila Prabhupada accepted him as his spiritual master in his heart. But it would take another 11 years because they met. They met. I have the date here. That was in 1922. And in 1933, Srila Prabhupada got initiation. And 1 year later, his spiritual master would. But then Srila Prabhupada, he became a manager, a department manager at the Kartik Chandra Bose laboratory in Calcutta. He was managing a chemical factory. They were producing so many products for pharmacies, and he became very expert. But at a certain moment, he wanted to engage in preaching. He wanted to leave. But they didn't want him to let him go, so they made agreement. Yes, okay, you become a representative all over India, and you sell our products all over India. And he started to travel. He was thinking of making a lot of money, but then he started to travel, and he met his spiritual master many times. He met him one time in Kosi. Kosi is not far from Vrindavan. I've been there. And in Kosi, Srila Bhaktivinoda Saraswati Maharaj went with his disciples of Parikram. Yes, and on Parikram. And but he was giving a lecture in the evening, and Prabhupada went to see him. When he arrived, one of the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, Saraswati Maharaj, said to Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, Abhayas kom, Bhakta Abhayas kom. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj said, yes, I notice him, he likes to hear, and therefore I will give him initiation. But not, finally, Srila moved a few times. He started a center, a pharmacy in different places, in Allahabad, and in every place he was supporting the Gaudiya Math and giving lectures. He was invited to give lectures because he was very learned in the Bhagavatam, in the Bhagavad Gita. So he became famous for giving lectures, although he was not initiated. But then then he got initiation, finally, in 1933. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj said, he will spread the message. And he gave him the order to preach abroad again. And he said to his other disciples, he will do everything alone. He will do everything alone. And then his spiritual master passed away, so many things. But then after his passing away, then it went wrong with his company and went all bankrupt. And he took sannyas. He was forced to take sannyas. He didn't want to take sannyas. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj appeared 3 times in his dream, telling him you have to take sannyas. And in the first time he was thinking, this is horrible. But then his wife helped him a bit because she traded his Bhagavatam for tea and cookies. And it was gone. And Prabhupada said, it's tea on me. And finally, his children were grown up because he had 3 children. And Vrindavan Das, I met Vrindavan Das. He passed also away now, his son. I met him. I saw him speaking at the 100th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada in Calcutta, Vrindavan Das. And then we know the story. He went to Vrindavan, then all the printing of the books, and then coming to Srimati Moraji in Calcutta, who was also Vaishnava from the Vallabhacharya tradition, and she begged him for a free passage to America. He was nearly 70. Then he started his mission, nearly 70. I know I'm 62 and I don't know if I'll be able to travel still next year. But he was 70. He was going on a mission and he had to get a P form, so many obstacles, but finally he got in America. And There the movement started. First he was in Butler, then in New York, and then finally 26th Avenue came. We have that building. I was there recently. I gave different lectures, also previous years. A small thing. There Prabhupada started. And then he went to LA, Montreal, and it spread to America, then London. Then 11 years it spread all over the world. And then Friday we will have his passed away the 15th of November, I think 1977, 14 or 15 November. That, yes. And then, of course, he founded ISKCON in 1965. And then there's a whole history of ISKCON. That's important to understand the history of ISKCON. But that we will start with tomorrow. That very short, the history of ISKCON. And then we go into the mission. Any question?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Other Srila Prabhupada, he was also follower of Gaurakishora, so something like that, or some other stuff like that.
I don't know that if he was initiated, his father, that I never heard about that. But he was practicing Vaishnavism.
And but the first question when I had was, I was thinking about the relationship which you can have with Krishna, like grandchild and Sarva, Dasya,
Yeah.
So this